there were a lot of angry phone calls involving the Prime Minister and Trump, and they came to the point where the Prime Minister said, well, look, we should anticipate that there's going to be firing back from Iran, and on that basis we should give the Americans clearance to use our bases in advance, defensively, as they put it, to attack weapons. Now, the fascinating thing is there was a meeting of the National Security Council, and the Prime Minister was overruled by his own cabinet members. You know, we've got headlines on the Express today, week, about the Prime Minister. He looks like someone who is being blown around.
How did the government decide on whether to support America and Israel in their attack on Iran? There's just a story emerging today about the row that could have taken place. Let's talk to Times Radio presenter Adam Boulton. Morning, Adam.
Morning.
So, this is a story I think originally comes out from Tim Shipman of The Spectator, but the question is, at what point did Keir Starmer make a decision about whether to support America initially or not, and how was that decision made?
Well, and also once he'd made it, was he able to get it past his cabinet? I mean, I think that's the real point. I mean, the first thing that we're learning as Tim Shipman and also in the Times today, people go into this, is that effectively Trump privately basically signalled on the 11th of February that he wanted British bases, he was going to go ahead. So that raises questions about the deployment of British forces, why we weren't more prepared. Really questions more for the, for John Healey and the Defence Department. But clearly we're seeing in the Times today a lot of allies saying, where were you?
Yeah.
But the big question of how we cooperate with the Americans, it appears that what happened was Hermer, the Attorney General, persuaded everyone that Britain couldn't be part of the initial assault and shouldn't back the Americans. That wasn't an issue, but there were a lot of angry phone calls involving the Prime Minister and Trump, and they came to the point where the Prime Minister said, well, look, we should anticipate that there's going to be firing back from Iran, and on that basis we should give the Americans clearance to use our bases in advance, defensively, as they put it, to attack weapons. Now, the fascinating thing is there was a meeting of the National Security Council, and the Prime Minister was overruled by his own cabinet members, particularly led by Ed Miliband, who you may remember was the man who spiked the attempt to punish Syria for the use of chemical weapons, but also with the support of Yvette Cooper. And what you're seeing really is the Prime Minister being pulled between the old factions of the Labour Party. Yeah. You've got the Blairites on the one hand, pro-American, going out, if you like, with Morgan McSweeney, and then you've got Ed Miliband flexing his muscles and actually, getting to the point that the Prime Minister couldn't get this through the meeting of the NSC. So what then happened was they had to wait until attacks happened, and then the Prime Minister gave the go-ahead for the use of the
So your point is that the Prime Minister was always going to cooperate defensively with America, but couldn't say it on the beginning of the week, and you had to wait till something happened to say that...
Exactly, and we actually have the situation of British military people coaching the Americans to say, well, if you phrase it like this, then we'll be able to get it through. But this is after Saturday morning when the whole thing had started. So it we've got headlines on the Express today, week about the Prime Minister. He looks like someone who is being blown around.
How can he be overruled? How can a Prime Minister be overruled on a decision like this?
Well, I did rather wonder that, but they had a meeting of the National Security Council, and presumably he sounded out those members of the cabinet who were there, and it was clear that he didn't have their support and he wasn't prepared to go against them.
And would they have walked if he'd gone against? We've had the febrile times around Keir Starmer. Is that the sign of the weakness that you're talking about, that they probably wouldn't have walked, but maybe he couldn't have known that they wouldn't have walked?
Or maybe they would have said, well, we'll go out publicly and say we disagree with this, which of course would have had a split government. I mean, I don't quite understand what the instrumentality is, but the words that Tim Shipman is using is overruled by his own cabinet.
And the net effect of that is we've ended up in the same place anyway.
Yeah.
But Trump has been slagging off Keir Starmer here all over the place. Presumably the people who think we've got too close to America still think we're too close to America, and there's this bigger question about how prepared we look as a nation when it comes to defending ourselves.
Well, I suspect as far as the British public is concerned, we have to be quite cautious, because the opinion polls do suggest that after Iraq there was not a mood to be gung-ho, shoulder to shoulder with the Americans, and Keir Starmer on that big picture I think has kept the position. But as far as managing alliances, it's not gone well. He was always going to have that initial row with Trump about the use of the Chagos Islands when he decided that we couldn't participate fully at the beginning. But he could have rode that back. Yeah. But he didn't, and that obviously resulted in that outburst in front of the Germans in the Oval Office. And he just looks like a man who's not, frankly, making his own policy. And you've also got John Healey, the Defence Secretary, who, would be identified probably with the new Labour branch of the government, man who voted, after all, for the Iraq invasion. He was also snubbed by these other forces within the cabinet. And
he's in Cyprus today, presumably. What he wants to say and what he can say might be slightly different things.
He's in Cyprus today, frankly, trying to patch up. I mean, the Cypriot government are making it clear that they are, quote, incandescent about the lack of preparation by the UK to protect them. And, that there are massive questions. Why, a submarine went through the region but was allowed to go on, why we didn't have any ships in the Mediterranean. I mean, it just seems that everyone got involved in the legalistic arguments rather than the reality of what was going to happen and just being practically prepared. And that, that doesn't look good.
Well, that quote in the Time I keep reading, one Western official said that the proposal to send the ship didn't cross the desk of the Chief of Defence Staff until 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday, when the whole thing started on Saturday. Is extraordinary. Well, we're about to get into that, Adam, what the Navy might make of all of that.
But I mean, the important thing is, bear in mind, if Trump was basically signalling he was going to do this on February the 11th. I mean, we really did have adequate time to prepare, and we don't appear to have done so.
No, we'll see how that story develops over the course of the day. Adam, great to speak to you as ever. That's Adam Boulton, Times Radio presenter.